Hi everyone, this is Dr. Shirish Kerur, and till now we have seen the working constructional details, etc., about a Lancashire boiler and the Babcock and Wilcox boiler. We'll be studying about the boiler mountings and accessories, but before we move on to the actual discussion on boiler mountings and accessories, we will see what are the advantages and disadvantages of water tube boiler over fire tube boiler. As we all know, water tube boilers are those in which water flows through the tubes, and fire tube boilers, the flue gases flow through the tubes, and these tubes are surrounded by water in a fire tube boiler. Uh, Generally, it is understood that Babcock and Wilcox boiler is a water tube boiler and a Lancashire boiler is a fire tube boiler. Some of the advantages are like steam can be generated at very high pressures. And in fact, that is one of the reasons why Babcock and Wilcox boiler is used for running steam turbines. Then, since there are a large number of pipes, the heating surface is more in comparison with the fire tube boilers. Then the hot gases flow at right angles to the direction of flow of water. Now, in heat transfer, there is a general rule or a principle that when heat gets transferred at right angles, then the amount of heat transfer is maximum. So a maximum amount of heat is transferred in case of a water tube boiler. There is a good and rapid circulation of water. Then since there are several pipes, if one or two pipes burst, then it doesn't affect the overall working of the boiler. And the entire assembly of the inclined water tubes and the steam drum, that is the drum which is at the top, these are two separate parts which are connected by the uptake header and the downtake header and so on. So since these are independent parts, transportation of such boilers becomes much easier. However, there are a few disadvantages also. Some of the disadvantages are because the tubes are very small, the water tubes are very small, and water is flowing through these tubes. The water has to be very pure, and it has to be soft water. Otherwise, calcification will take place, and very quickly the tubes will get clogged, and clogging can result in bursting of these tubes. Also, it will reduce the efficiency of heat transfer. So water treatment is very essential for water tube boilers. Maintenance cost is slightly higher as compared to fire tube boilers, mainly because the number of parts are more, and failure in the feed water, even for a short time, that is, if the level of water goes down, or if the entire water gets exhausted in the drum, then this can lead to overheating of the water tubes, and it can be dangerous. Now we will see what are the differences between fire tube and water tube boilers in a nutshell. In fire tube boilers, the flue gases, which are nothing but the hot gases, the products of combustion, they flow through the tubes surrounded by water, while in water tube boilers, water flows through the tubes and the flue gases pass over them. In fire tube boilers, the furnace will be situated inside the boiler shell. This is what we saw in a Lancashire boiler. So we call it as internally fired. And in case of Babcock and Wilcox boiler, we saw that the firing is done externally. So the furnace and the chain grate stroker, etc., is located external to the boiler. Then in fire tube boilers, water is circulated within the drum itself, while in a water tube boiler, water is circulated between the drum and the water tubes continuously. Then in fire tube boilers, bursting of flue tubes can be disastrous. That is going to be that is going to have a catastrophic effect, because the entire water not only will extinguish the fire, but it will also gush out, that is millions of liters of water, which can be disastrous. But bursting of water tubes will not cause severe damage. Now we'll come to boiler mountings and accessories. We have seen, for example, this is a Lancashire boiler, and this is a Babcock and Wilcox boiler. Uh, Majority of the parts, almost all the parts which we see in these two, that is in case of Lancashire boiler as well as the Babcock and Wilcox boiler, all these parts, that have been labeled are classified under mountings only. We cannot see the accessories because the accessories are mounted separately or they are kept separately. Let's see what is the difference between a boiler mounting and a boiler accessory. Now, boiler mountings are parts that are mandatory. They are a must for the working of a boiler. You cannot have a boiler where all the necessary mountings are not installed. So, in fact, the government regulations are also so severe and strict that if mountings are not there in place, then they may not even allow the installation of the boiler. These mountings are mandatory and they help in controlling of steam generation and also to maintain a certain water level in the boiler. Then they are needed for measurement of important steam properties like what is its quality, whether it is wet steam, dry steam or superheated steam, etc. Then the pressure and so on, and for providing safe operation of the boiler. So these are the general characteristics of boiler mountings. And just to give you a real life example, like we have boiler mountings in our domestic appliances also. A pressure cooker, for example, will have mountings. One which has been indicated is a dead weight safety valve, as you can see, and the other one is a fusible plug. Now, when the water starts boiling and it reaches a certain pressure inside, which is greater than the pressure applied by the dead weight safety valve in the downward direction, then the dead weight safety valve gets lifted and the steam is released. In some cases, in older, you can say once the pressure cooker gets old, something happens, something goes wrong with the dead weight safety valve, then it may get jammed. Now, if it gets jammed, then the pressure of the steam inside will keep on increasing, not only the pressure but also the temperature. So here we have a fusible plug. There is a small hole in which there is an alloy which is filled, and this alloy is similar to a hard solder. If you remember, we have lead, tin and sometimes silver which is added to form a hard solder whose melting point is close to about 500 to 550 degrees. So if the dead weight safety valve fails, then the fusible plug, when the temperature reaches about 450 or 500, it fuses. It melts and it is blown off. So there is a hole which is created through which the steam starts escaping, and hence the pressure cooker works safely. So on similar lines, we have different boiler mountings. Some of them which are enlisted are, the first one is the dead weight safety valve, which I just showed in the previous slide. This is used to blow off the steam or let off the steam from the steam space when the boiler, when the pressure of the steam inside the boiler exceeds the working pressure. Now, if steam is continuously formed and in case that steam is not used anywhere, then it starts getting accumulated and the pressure rises. So once the pressure goes beyond a certain pre-decided value, then this valve comes into action and it gets lifted and the pressure of the steam is released. The second one is a water level indicator. Now, obviously, the process of steam formation involves conversion, adding of heat to water and converting it into steam. So as we add heat to water, water slowly gets converted into steam and the amount of water gets reduced and the steam is formed. Now, you cannot allow the level of water to come below the danger mark. So there is the water level indicator through which is mainly used to see what is the level of the water. You can use two water level indicators, and once the level decreases below a certain mark, then the feed check valve is opened by which fresh water is fed into the boiler drum. Then we have a steam stop valve. Now, the whole process, the reason why we want a boiler is to form steam. Now, this steam is going to be used further for different applications. So, obviously, once the steam is generated and formed and is available in the steam space, it has to be taken out. Now, it has to be taken out whenever it is needed and it has to be stopped when it is not needed. So, to do this action, we use a steam stop valve. So it mainly stops and allows the flow of steam out of the boiler where it is taken for further usage. Then we have pressure gauge. This is also one of the most important boiler mounting. This indicates the pressure of the steam. Now, it has to be continuously monitored, because once the pressure goes beyond the danger mark again, then care has to be taken that the steam pressure is brought down, either by taking the steam out through the steam stop valve, or the dead weight pressure, the dead weight valve has to be lifted. Then we have a feed check valve. As I just mentioned, when the water level goes below a certain level, then water has to be let inside. So it stops and allows the flow of fresh water into the boiler. Once the water level approaches the danger mark, the valve is open to let water into the drum. Once it gets filled, it is closed again. Then we have a blow-off valve or a blow-off cock in some, as it is called in some cases. Now the function of this is to remove the sediments or mud periodically which is collected. Whatever be the care we take, there will be some inclusions or unwanted particles which are there, which will settle down, and they have to be removed from time to time. In fact, in case there is some calcification, that also has to be chipped off and removed in order to improve the efficiency of heat transfer. So all this can be done by using this blow-off valve. A fusible plug, which I just showed on a pressure cooker. This it performs in a slightly different way in case of boilers. What happens is the fusible plug is so mounted that when it fuses, then the water will come out and it will actually be directed on the furnace. So it is going to extinguish the fire. Now, in some cases, you can use two fusible plugs, one at the bottom and one at the top. The top one will release the steam and the bottom one will extinguish the fire. Then we come to the last part of our discussion, that is boiler accessories. Now, boiler mountings are those without which you cannot operate a boiler at all, while boiler accessories, even if they are not there, you can still make a boiler function. But in case you use a boiler accessory, you are going to improve the overall efficiency of the boiler. So boiler accessories are installed or used to improve the overall efficiency of steam power plant and enable proper working of the boiler. Now, obviously, a boiler forms a part of a steam power plant. Just producing steam is of no use unless it is used somewhere. So it forms a part of a power plant. That is why we say accessories are used to improve the overall efficiency of the steam power plant. Now, some of the important boiler accessories are, the first one is the economizer. Economizer is very similar to a radiator which is used in a car or such high-end vehicles. It is used as a heat exchanger. Now, this is mainly used to preheat the water, that is the water, feed water which is taken into the boiler. Let's say the ambient temperature is about 30 degrees. Now, if I take water into the boiler at 30 degrees and try to heat it up to its saturation temperature, then I'll have to add more heat to it. Instead, the flue gases, that is the gases which transfer the heat to the water, and finally when they are being let out through the chimney, they are still at a very high temperature. When I say high temperature, maybe about 80 degrees or 90 degrees. Now these flue gases, when they pass over the economizer pipe through which the feed water is flowing, then the feed water which was taken inside at 30 degrees centigrade will reach a temperature of maybe about 45 degrees or 50 degrees centigrade. So without any additional effort, you have increased the temperature of the water by about 20 degrees. So you have improved the efficiency. You have not burnt any extra additional fuel. So it is installed to increase the efficiency of the boiler. Then we have, on similar lines, air preheater. See, after the flue gases pass the heat to the economizer, before they are let out, they still have some heat content. They are still hot. So there is going to be a requirement of air draught in order to burn the fuel, and we are going to force air over the furnace so that the burning of the fuel happens efficiently. Now when we are sending this air again in turn absorbs heat from the fuel which is burning in order to raise its temperature. So it is better to send in air at a higher temperature so that it absorbs lesser heat. So air preheater is again a device which is similar to an economizer, but here in this case we are going to increase the temperature of the air. So in boilers, these preheaters are installed between the economizer and the chimney. That is, after the economizer, before the flue gases are let out through the chimney, we will have the air preheater. Then we have a superheater. Now normally steam exists in three forms. We have wet steam, dry saturated steam, and superheated steam. Superheated steam is the one where there are absolutely no entrailed particles of water, and it has got very high energy, heat energy content in them. And for running a steam turbine, in fact, we need superheated steam. So superheater, generally, if you see the Babcock and Wilcox boiler very carefully, you can see the superheater tubes. Now, the steam which is formed in the top surface or the top layer of the drum, that is taken through the superheater pipes, and it is taken up again, and in this process it again absorbs the heat from the flue gases, and from dry saturated condition it reaches superheated condition. Now there are some instances where you may not require superheated steam. Even dry saturated steam is okay. So that is one of the reasons why Lancashire boilers generally don't have superheaters, while Babcock and Wilcox boilers have superheaters, because they are the ones which are used in steam power plants. So superheater is used to produce superheated steam without any change in pressure and without any extra effort. Then we have a feed pump. Even though we have listed this under an accessory, it is actually something which is close to a mounting only, but since it is separately installed, we call it as an accessory. It pumps the water from the storage to the boiler during the boiler operation. Then we have the steam trap. In some cases we also have anti-priming pipe and so on. Now these are mainly used to separate water particles from the steam. So these are boiler accessories, which means when we summarize the whole thing, boiler mountings are those which are mandatory, which are a must for safe working of a boiler, and boiler accessories are those without which also a boiler can work, but if used, you are going to increase the efficiency of the boiler. So that concludes our discussion on boilers completely. We'll be starting with pumps in our next session. Thank you.